Welcome to Look Ahead Radio with Tom Arms and Lockwood Phillips.
This is Lockwood Phillips again, presenting Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms of Look Ahead Radio. And this evening, joining us from London, Tom Arms. Tom, good evening. And as we start the program, how's the weather there in London?
It's finally rained. 2 weeks of sunshine. We were suffering a drought.
Wait a second. 2 weeks of sunshine cannot a drought make.
It does in this country. There's one thing about this country. If it doesn't rain, we run out of water. There's very little in the way of artesian wells or groundwater. A lot of it comes out of the skies because it's a very small country. And so they have reservoirs everywhere to catch the rain.
Wait a second. Aren't you surrounded by a little body of water? I'm trying to think. Maybe the Atlantic Ocean.
It's full of salt.
Well, you can desalinate that.
Yeah, it doesn't taste very nice.
Oh, okay. All right. So finally getting some rain. What about the heat, where you've got a significant heat dome over the United States?
Well, it's been in the mid-70s here. It's been rather nice. Between 70 and 75.
Sounds to me like folks may want to go to the United Kingdom, particularly the big island of England, where, of course, we have a little more parity with a pound and the dollar. We'll talk about Brexit here with you in just a moment. But I'm curious, you are also helping a campaign with your wife who's running for public office?
Yes, it's going well. We're out there banging on doors, handing out leaflets, taking lots of photographs of her. It's going very well.
Now, are you taking any notes and keys from the Republican convention or maybe watching the Democrat convention to plan your campaigns for your wife?
Well, we've got some theme music. Her name is Eileen. And so there's a song called Come On, Come On, Come On, Eileen. Come on, come on, come. And I'm thinking about putting that on a boombox and walking down the street with it.
Oh, hey, that'll work. But, you've got to make sure that the artist is willing to allow you to do that for that candidate. As we've discovered here recently, the artists sometimes get upset when their music is used in political venues.
I'll take that risk. It's just a council seat. We'll see what happens.
Not big bucks in a long shot. As we're talking about the politics, what is the mood there in, London and in the UK when it comes to political issues? We're going to talk about the conventions here in the States, but what is the mood there?
Okay, well, the Labour Party at the moment, certainly the Conservatives are in power, as we know, and Brexit is being negotiated. The British Prime Minister, Theresa May, is in Italy as we speak, or she's on the plane on the way back. She's had a meeting with the Italian Prime Minister. The Labour Party is in total disarray. There is going to be a ruling from the High Court tomorrow as to whether or not the leader, Jeremy Corbyn, will be allowed to stand in a new leadership election.
When you say allowed to stand, in other words, allowed to be a candidate?
Allowed to be a candidate.
Whoa.
The National Executive Committee has agreed by a vote of 14 to 18 that he can stand, that the incumbent should be allowed to stand without nominations from members of the Parliamentary Labour Party, which all the other candidates have to have. But that has been challenged in the court, and there's going to be a ruling tomorrow on it.
Wow. And this is when you say the court, we're talking a legal court?
A legal court.
Wow. Here in the States, we call them superdelegates, and we've had some recent conflicts on that in the Democrat convention. I would assume that that's very similar. That as much as there is a great divide both in language and ocean geography, there seems to be a lot of similarities. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Again, you're listening to a special program here, Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms of Look Ahead Radio. Looking forward to some additional conversations. We'll talk about the Democrat convention. We've also got to talk about emails. We've got to find out if maybe Jeremy Corbyn needs to be worried about hacking of his emails, or maybe candidate Eileen Arms might have to worry about hacking of her emails. We'll find out about that in just a moment here on Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms.
Look Ahead Radio will return in just a moment.
This is Tom Arms and Look Ahead Radio's World Report for the week beginning the 1st of August. Look Ahead broadcasts tomorrow's news today so that you can plan to participate. It's time for the Olympics. Friday, the 5th of August, the month-long games officially open in Rio de Janeiro. Participating for the first time in the games will be a team from South Sudan and a team of athletes from refugee camps. Conspicuous by their absence will be an official Russian team, banned because of state-sponsored doping. But the Russians will stage their own 20-nation military version of the Olympics called the International Army Games. Among the countries participating will be Iran, who next week will also take delivery of a Russian S-300 surface-to-air missile system capable of downing attacking ballistic missiles. The Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is off to Azerbaijan next week for talks on improving regional trade links, while on Tuesday the Prime Minister of Singapore, Sien Lung, will be entertained at the White House. 2 days later, President Barack Obama turns 55. Just north of Singapore in Malaysia, a controversial National Security Act takes effect on Monday. The act gives the Prime Minister power to arrest suspected terrorists without a warrant. Meanwhile, in South Africa, there are national local elections next week, and in Jordan, campaigning starts for that country's parliamentary elections next month. In Thailand, there is a constitutional referendum. Back in the United States, John Hinckley Jr., the man who attempted to assassinate President Reagan in 1981, will be conditionally released after 35 years in a psychiatric hospital. And finally, twins of the world will gather for their annual get-together in, wait for it, Twinsburg in Ohio. And that was next week's News Today, so that you can plan to participate in the world around you. Stay tuned after this message for the expanded Look Ahead World Analysis. This is Tom Arms of LookAhead Radio's expanded world analysis for the week beginning the 1st of August. LookAhead broadcasts tomorrow's news today so that you can plan to participate. The Olympic torch arrives in Rio de Janeiro on Thursday, and on Friday it is carried into the Maracana Stadium to start the 27th Modern Summer Olympics. The cut-down opening ceremony will be attended by a number of dignitaries, including Secretary of State John Kerry, London Mayor Sadiq Khan, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, and French President François Hollande. Conspicuous by her absence will be Brazil's Dilma Rousseff, who is suspended from her presidential role while awaiting her impeachment trial. The country's economic problems have also forced major budget cutbacks. The opening ceremony will only be 10% of the cost of the 2012 London Games. Organisers say the money is better spent on the city's sewers. Also absent from the Games will be the official Russian team, although a handful of Russian athletes will attend as individuals. Next week, the Russians will have a military version of the Games called the International Army Games. 20 nations will participate in a mixture of sports and war games. The US was invited, but refused to attend. The only NATO country going is Greece. Iran next week takes delivery of Russia's S-300 air defense system. The surface-to-air missiles were developed by the former Soviet Union in 1979 and are capable of knocking out incoming ballistic missiles as well as attack planes. The sale is seen as another sign of a strengthening Iranian-Russian relationship. Also strengthening is relations between Iran and Azerbaijan. Over the past 10 years, they've been generally cool because of Azerbaijan's ties with Israel. But this week, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani will visit Baku to strengthen trade ties. Both countries need to attract foreign investment and believe that the best way to do that is to boost regional trade. In South Africa, the ruling ANC faces a major test in local elections across the country. President Jacob Zuma has become increasingly unpopular as the economy nosedives and corruption scandals involving himself and his ministers refuse to disappear. Protests are also expected in Malaysia on Monday when the National Security Act takes effect. The act gives Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak the power to declare any area a security risk and arrest any individual in the designated area without a warrant. Human rights organizers have branded the act as a step towards dictatorship. Razak himself is accused of being involved in a $700 million financial scandal. And that was next week's News Today, so that you can plan to participate in the world around you. Stay tuned for World Viewpoints with myself and Lockwood Phillips.
Welcome back to Look Ahead Radio. Here is Lockwood Phillips.
Viewpoints around the world with Tom Arms, live from London. Of course, he with Look Ahead Radio. And Tom, thank you for being with us this evening. There's so much to talk to you about. We can start with, and I think we'll since we did mention the topic of politics, let's talk about politics, and particularly the Democrat convention. And I do want to get into the email issue as well. Are the folks in the UK and in Europe paying close attention to the Democrat convention?
They're paying very close attention to the Democrat convention. The big news that's coming out here, it just come out over an hour ago, is this news that it looks as if Trump has invited foreign governments to hack into Hillary Clinton's email, basically to spy on her.
No. Is that being reported as serious news?
Yes, it's being reported as extremely serious news. I'm getting emails from everyone saying, what has he done now? And then on top of that, apparently he also, it's been reported that he has also suggested that he might recognize Russian control of Crimea.
No.
Well, that's what's being reported.
That is fascinating. I'm not going to get into the details on this. I think what's important is to hear what is being written and noted in Europe. It is so far from accurate, but we'll leave it at that for the moment. My question then goes to the issue of emails and the fact that there's all this attention to the emails at the DNC. That's the Democrat National Convention. I'm wondering, was there a great deal of interest in the hacking of Hillary Clinton's emails when she was Secretary of State there in the UK?
There was a certain amount of interest, yes. I mean, basically people thought, it's very careless, as the FBI said, and it shows a lack of judgment.
Wouldn't you argue that the same would hold true with the arguments about the DNC?
No, I think it's the exact opposite, because what's being reported here is that the Russians have hacked into the DNC emails, and that the implication is, what's being reported here is that there are links between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
This is an amazing story. I'm fascinated by this. And in fact, this offhanded remark from Donald Trump, but we'll leave it at that. The other aspect of this is we know for a fact that there has been a concerted effort to hack into all federal and state issues associated with the federal government. And it just fascinates me that there's casual attention to the hacking of Secretary Clinton's emails and communications while she was Secretary of State, handling an immense amount of very sensitive matter. And yet the DNC hacking is generating that kind of coverage. Okay, moving on. Final question. Are you all watching the convention on TV? Do you have the benefit of doing it as delayed broadcast, things of this nature?
No, we can watch it live. We have cable television just like you do, 5,652 channels.
Right. And they got to put something on it, so they're putting U.S. material on it. Okay, let's move on to other issues that are, quite frankly, we'll stick with the UK. I want to talk with the issue of Brexit right now. What's the future of Brexit? And of course, by the way, in case you haven't heard, the U.S. is paying close attention to the world economy, and there are some concerns that Brexit, of course, will have a dampening impact on the world economy. What's the future of Brexit at this point? Any changes?
No real changes. The only one that has come up, it just came up today, was that Britain may want to leave the EU customs union.
Okay.
Now this is going to this is in order that the British can start negotiating now with other countries for trade deals.
Okay.
Now, the way the customs union would work is that means they can continue to export goods to Europe tariff-free.
Okay.
That they don't have to pay any tariff on anything going into Europe. But if they are exporting anything to a third country, they have to charge EU tariffs. That's what the customs union says.
So in some regards, there is a bridge now with the European Union on British exit. Let's talk here, and you mentioned a topic also of the legal challenge earlier with Jeremy Corbyn and, of course, his effort to stand for election. And he is suing, he is not suing, that's my phrase, but he is being challenged in court whether or not he should be allowed to stand for election. as head of the Labour Party?
Absolutely right.
And
and if there's supposed to be elections, I think it's on the 24th of September. The judgment is due tomorrow. It's expected tomorrow. It's not guaranteed it would be tomorrow. The judge says he hopes to have a judgment tomorrow, but he will allow an appeal to his judgment. Okay. So, it won't end tomorrow, but I can say that if there's a judgment against Corbyn, that it won't look good for him.
Will this be a precedent-setting decision?
I have never heard of this happening before.
Okay. All right. We've got a caller standing by. I'm going to go to Mike and Hubert. Then we've got to get on to other issues. Mike, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Lockwood.
Yes, sir.
Mike, I got a couple of questions for Mr. Arms.
Arms. Okay.
Arms?
Yes, correct.
Arms
okay.
as in arms and legs.
And we're heavily armed, for that matter, with guns and cannon. But go ahead.
Okay, man. You say your wife was a liberal and running for office, and that the Labour Party is a liberal party there in England?
No, there is a centre party called the Liberal Democrats, and she's a member of that party.
Okay, Liberal Democrats.
So there are several parties, but the three main parties are the Conservatives, Labour, and the Liberal Democrats.
All right, so I got you there. So she's going for the Liberal Democrats office?
Yes.
That's right.
Right. So are you also a Liberal Democrat?
Well, I was, until very recently, the membership secretary for the local Labour Party. But I had to resign because I said I would be campaigning on behalf of my wife. Family comes first. And they have rules, which are quite right, which says you cannot be a member of the Labour Party if you're campaigning for a candidate from another party. So I've had to resign.
But you still have liberal views.
I still have liberal views.
Okay, so I just wanted to know, what that was going for. So if you were an American, and does liberal over there mean the same as liberal here, or is it a kind of way out, different kind of liberal?
No, it probably liberal here is probably equivalent to a Democratic Party, to the Democrats.
Democrat liberals here.
Labour is probably equivalent to Bernie Sanders.
Gotcha.
Oh, all right. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, so that's that answers a lot of it, because I would, where you talk, sometimes I wonder where you're coming from. And now I know.
I'm coming from London.
Mike,
you're a liberal Democrat.
Yeah, that's right. Mike.
Which is the same thing as here.
Yeah, Mike.
So it's fascinating to me, Lockwood, on, how we got there.
It is, and I thank you for your call.
Does he being paid to be on the show, or is he paying to be on the show?
No. I enjoy having him. He's an old classmate of mine, and I love having this conversation, because let me tell you what's important, Mike. We're hearing what is being said, and we're hearing unfettered what's being said and written in the United Kingdom and in Europe, and I think we need to be aware of it. But Mike, thank you for those. Thanks for clarity on that one.
I would have a question about that. Unfettered things that he's talking about. If he's identifying as a liberal Democrat, which seems to be the same as Democrat.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just going to throw that out there.
All right. Thanks very much, Mike.
Right, thanks a lot.
Appreciate that.
Look Ahead Radio will return in just a moment.
This is Tom Arms of LookAhead Radio's World Financial Report for the week beginning the 1st of August. LookAhead broadcasts tomorrow's financial news today so that you can plan to make money. It's post-Brexit Super Thursday next week. On one single day, the Bank of England meets to discuss interest rates, and Governor Mark Carney has to report to the Chancellor of the Exchequer on inflation targets. There's talk of moving to negative interest rates, and banks are threatening to charge savers to keep their money. On the oil front, there is a change at the top of OPEC as the former head of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company takes over as Secretary General of the oil cartel. Economic indicators out next week include second quarter British GDP figures on Monday. On Wednesday, the French Consumer Confidence Report for June is published, and on Thursday, economists are projecting that France's second quarter GDP figures will be down to 0.2% growth from 0.6%. On Thursday, the Eurozone's Consumer Confidence Report is issued along with consumer inflation expectations. In the US, there are figures announced on home sales, consumer confidence for June, and the second quarter consumer cost index, which is expected to remain steady at 0.6%. Company results next week include fourth quarter results from 21st Century Fox. Second quarter results are due from Mercury General on Monday, and on Wednesday it is the turn of Tesla Motors, Kelly Services, and Time Warner. Thursday will see quarter two announcements from Priceline, Swift Energy, and Motorola. Miller Coors will release an interim earnings statement on Tuesday, and there will be a general shareholders meeting of CA Technologies on Wednesday. And that was next week's World Financial News Today, so that you can plan to make money. This is Tom Arms of LookAhead Radio's World Sport and Entertainment Report for the week beginning the 1st of August. LookAhead broadcasts tomorrow's sport and entertainment news today, so that you can plan to enjoy yourself. It happens once every 4 years, and next Friday it starts in Rio de Janeiro, the Summer Olympics. Over the next month, 10,500 athletes from 207 nations will compete in 306 events, and they will be followed by the Paralympics. Hard-pressed Brazil won't be able to spend as much as previous Olympic hosts on the opening ceremony, but Brazilian film director Fernando Meirelles promises a futuristic display showcasing the talents of supermodel Gisele Bündchen. Earlier in the week on Tuesday, the International Olympic Committee meets in Rio to decide what events to add to the roster for the 2020 Games. Up for consideration are baseball, women's softball, surfing, and skateboarding. Next week is also the start of the month-long Edinburgh Fringe Festival, the largest arts festival in the world. Last year, 2,300,000 tickets were sold for 50,000 performances to 3,300 shows in 313 venues. Not so easy to attend is the month-long Arirang Festival in the North Korean capital Pyongyang. Thousands of specially trained gymnasts put on a series of displays packed with communist symbolism. Also on the unusual side next week is the International Puppet Festival in Jerusalem. Spread over 5 days from Thursday will be 125 different puppet shows. This year's focus will be on Thailand's shadow puppets. Back in the US of A, 74-year-old singing legend Barbra Streisand starts a 9-city North American summer tour with a concert at Staples Center in Los Angeles. And that was next week's sport and entertainment news today, so that you can plan to enjoy yourself.
We now return to Look Ahead Radio. Here is Lockwood Phillips.
Let's talk here for a moment, and we're going to have to carry this over into the next conversation, and that is the issues in France and in Mogadishu. And of course, the most recent story in France coming from Rouen, and the death of a Catholic priest and terrorist activity associated with, Islamic extremists. What impact is that having in the UK and in Europe, Tom?
Well, it's not having much of an impact in the UK, to be quite honest, other than, we're following it very closely. We've been more or less untouched. There was an attempt to attack a soldier recently. That was thwarted. The soldier fought them off. He had 2 attackers. In France, it's definitely having an effect on the politics. The French president's popularity rating is down to 19%. Ooh. Wow. And it's all related to his inability to control attacks, the security and terrorism issue, almost entirely down to that. He is officially the most unpopular president in the history of France. Now, he is probably thinking about running for re-election next year. I don't think he's going to even get his party's nomination. And every time there's a terror attack, the Front National, which is headed by Marine Le Pen, who wants to withdraw from the EU and wants to, reduce immigration and everything else and possibly even deport people, she gets a few more supporters. And I tend to think that perhaps ISIS has a policy of trying to get her into power, because if she gets into power and starts introducing some of her policies, it's going to make the 4.5 million Arabs, ethnic Arabs in France, feel even more disenfranchised than they already are.
It's interesting. France is a secular country and has been since, the French Revolution. The interesting aspect of this is that this has become all centered around religion. The other aspect that is interesting is your comment about the EU. Of course, all of that having to do with the recent flood of refugees into, Central Europe. Is there an effort on the part of France to somehow stem the flow of refugees and new arrivals? What's happening?
No, not seriously. They're not trying to stem the flow of refugees. They have not been taking a lot of the refugees coming from Syria, the ones who came from Syria that were the problem. They didn't want to go to France, the Syrian refugees. They want to go to Germany.
And then
That's basically it.
Let's talk about Germany, because I know that Chancellor Merkel is also having her own political problems. And I saw recently that the German general populace is feeling very threatened by, the stories in France and experiences in Germany, a recent machete attack and things of this nature, which was more oriented towards, I think, a family dispute. But still, there's a rising concern there in Germany, is there not?
Yes and no. What we've heard over here in the UK and what's been reported is the country is really split on the issue. That there are a lot of people who are 100% behind Merkel, who wants to, keep the immigration numbers coming. They have always been taking a large number of immigrants, even before the refugee crisis. Right. And then there are a large number of people who feel the exact opposite. And they have very strong feelings both ways. And so it's a very divisive issue.
But this seems to be I would say, the spark for the concerns related to the European Union, or am I wrong there?
It's another problem for the European Union.
Okay.
The reason it's another problem...
Go ahead.
Yeah. The reason it's another problem is because Germany wants to take more immigrants, but she wants to share them throughout the European Union. And the countries in Eastern Europe don't want to have any immigrants at all.
All right, we're going to get back to this in just a moment with Tom Arms of LookAhead Radio, and we're talking with him this afternoon. He in London, where, by the way, it's just 15 minutes to midnight. We have several callers standing by. June, Newbern, stand by. You're up first, and Walter and Elias. You're listening to Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms.
LookAhead Radio will return in just a moment.
Observations of an Expat by Tom Arms. ANC dominance of South Africa looks set to begin to end on the 3rd of August, and that will be a good thing. Not just because of the ridiculous antics of President Jacob Zuma or the endemic corruption that riddles the party from the bottom to its very pinnacle of power. No, it is because the time has come. Independence movements need a focal point. They need a charismatic figure around whom to rally. That figure in South Africa was clearly Nelson Mandela. He in turn needed an organization to unite dozens of feuding tribes and ethnic groups behind the goal of freedom. Once that goal was achieved, the ANC faced the same problem of any single-issue party. It no longer had a purpose. It has ridden for 16 years on the coattails of Mandela and past glory, but the political tools needed to run a country are different from those employed to win a nation. Without a goal, the party has drifted rudderless into mismanagement and corruption. The electorate is starting to realize it. The ANC is about to discover just that in nationwide local elections. For the first time in 22 years, the party of Mandela is preparing to take a major beating at the polls, especially in the vital urban areas. The ANC support looks set to slip to 31% in Johannesburg, down from 59% in the 2011 local elections. In Tshwane municipality, which includes the capital Pretoria, polls indicate a fall to 23% from 55%. In Nelson Mandela Bay, support is reported to be just 28%, down from 52% in the last local elections. The beneficiary of the ANC's expected losses is the Democratic Alliance, led by Mmusmi Maimane. There is no doubt that President Zuma has become a liability to the ANC. In April, he survived an impeachment vote, but still faces corruption charges dating back to the 1990s. In December, he was castigated for changing his finance minister twice in a week. The move sent the rand plummeting and triggered opposition calls for his resignation. Zuma is the focal point of public approbation, but not the voters' only cause for disapproval. An opinion poll of 2,400 people in June revealed that 60% of the electorate thought that the ANC-controlled councils were doing a bad job. In Johannesburg, Mayor Parks Tau has been criticised by the Auditor General for unauthorised spending of $3 billion. You know corruption has reached unacceptable levels when society invents a new word for new forms of dishonesty. In South Africa, they've coined the word tenderpreneurism. A tenderpreneur is a person who enriches themselves by corruptly awarding government contracts. They usually throw in shoddy workmanship as well. Then there's Black Economic Empowerment, acronym B. This can only be described as positive discrimination gone mad. Corruption, of course, undermines both the political and economic structures of a country. South Africa is a rich country. It's an advanced Western economy with massive deposits of gold and diamonds, as well as valuable agricultural land. It also has a well-established infrastructure. It is political malfeasance that has pushed South Africa to the brink of recession. Since its founding in 1912 until now, the ANC has been the primary vehicle for South African black political power. In its struggle for freedom, it learned how to fight. In power, it has learned arrogance and corruption. Hopefully, on the 3rd of August, it will start to learn humility.
Welcome back to Look Ahead Radio. Here is Lockwood Phillips.
Viewpoints around the world with Tom Arms of Look Ahead Radio. We've got some callers standing by. I do want to ask them to be fairly brief because I've got to get to the story of Turkey. That's a big story. But first, let's start with June she's in Newburgh. June, good evening.
Good evening, Lockwood. I really enjoy your program when you have Tom on.
Thank you.
But I am having a hissy fit listening to what his interpretation of what's happening with Trump in this country is and what's actually going on. And I thought it's very important that you, instead of going to another topic, explain to him what's really happened instead of him walking away with that half-crazed whatever you want to call it. I'm sure that's what he's heard.
Well, it is.
June, I'm not half crazed at all. And Lockwood has explained it very well.
No, that's not what I said. I said the idea is so crazy from what it really is that Lockwood needs to help you really understand what the situation is, not what you've heard in a newspaper or on television.
June, I appreciate that. I will try to do that, but I want to do it very quickly, and I want to move on, but I will do that right now. Thank you very much for your call. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, it is an issue that the Donalds simply said that hacking the DNC and emails in general is not unusual, and he just made light of the fact that, in spite of the fact that we have given a pass to the Secretary of State on the hacking of her emails, he just made light of that. As far as any relationship with Russia on Crimea, totally inaccurate. He has simply said that he has no problem communicating with Putin when it comes to defeating ISIS. And he said creating a relationship with Putin on something that has been a keystone issue for the Trump campaign is ISIS, and he would like to see them defeated, and he's confident that Russia has the willingness and the ability to assist in accomplishing that task. Those are the two items. The Crimea aspect is totally inaccurate, as is the story that he is ready to desert NATO. He is simply saying the other countries of NATO need to pay their fair share, and he would also is asking that NATO really, and interestingly enough, he was critical of NATO's response to terrorism. And since then, NATO has raised terrorism as one of its, key issues to begin determine how to counteract. So that's in a nutshell. And June, I've done it. Thank you very much. Let's go to Walter in Alliance. Walter, welcome.
Yeah, Tom, your Environmental Secretary Elizabeth Truss has stated, English farmland is some of the best in the world, and I want to see it dedicated to growing quality food and crops. I do not want to see its productive potential wasted and its appearance blighted by solar farms. Farms are for food, and what keeps our landscape beautiful. Solar panels are best placed on south-facing rooftops where they will not compromise the success of our agriculture industry. And I understand that the subsidies for farmers ended in January 2015, and the solar subsidies ended in April 2016. Is this a trend to where the English are sick of these damn things going up everywhere? Because it's something that's going to happen here in North Carolina.
Certainly, they've cut back on the subsidies for solar panels. And certainly there is going to be a need to grow more food in the UK because we're not going to be able to import as much from Europe and other parts of the world. We're going to have to support the farmers a lot more. So the subsidies to the farmers is probably going to ease off as well. I really don't know, to be quite honest, if there's going to be complete change on green policy. I know Donald Trump would love it if they cut back on some of the wind farms because they are blocking the views of some of his golfers up in Scotland.
Well, we've also heard, though, that they are looking to withdraw some of the green energy programs, even in Germany. All right, Walter, by the way, thank you for asking that question because, of course, you have a situation there in Pamlico County. Is that correct?
That's right. There's 50 parcels been bought by a Colorado firm that I believe, I haven't checked it out completely, but I believe it was the left hand selling to the right hand, and there's some shenanigans going on. But personally, there's a proposed solar farm in back of my house, which was built in 1874.
Walter, thank you very much for the call. I appreciate bringing that topic up, and we're going to talk about that in the future. If I can get more details, I'll talk to you later, though.
Bye.
Thank you. Tom, I've got to go quickly to the issue of Turkey. This is a breaking story. Continuing efforts on the part of President Erdogan to control the country. What's happening?
He has tonight closed down 3 news agencies, 16 television channels, 45 newspapers, and 15 magazines.
Wow.
That's just tonight.
Is this a concern from the European perspective?
Well, on top of that, he also announced, I think it was yesterday, that he's getting very annoyed about the EU, which he claims has not been sincere over an aid deal with Turkey to contain the influx of refugees from Syria. They have not agreed or not put into place their part of the deal, which says that they would give visa-free access to Turkish citizens to the Schengen area. On top of that, he has said that he will probably reintroduce the death penalty. And if he reintroduces the death penalty, he cannot be a member of the European Union, ever.
A lot is happening in Europe and, of course, in the United Kingdom and around the world. We just want to mention to you, every Friday evening, Look Ahead Radio here on the talk station with Tom Arms with his Look Ahead Notes.
Look Ahead Radio is a production of the talk station.